I'm Rob.
And I'm Luke.
Today we're going to be talking about how Democrats played their hand. I think they've overextended themselves.
Yes.
Sam Harris and Hunter Biden. Ranked choice voting in Alaska.
What a joke.
And finally, wake up Republicans.
Grow a spine.
Welcome to Patriot Pravda.
Oh, yeah.
Go and tell that long-tongued liar. Go and tell that midnight rider. Tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter. Tell him that God's gonna cut him down. Tell him that God's gonna cut him down.
Well, welcome to another episode of Patriot Pravda. Today, firstly, I think Democrats have overextended themselves in this Mar-a-Lago raid.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards that have been shown, and a lot of predictions that have been made that probably weren't in their best interest to have done.
So yeah, with the Mark Zuckerberg being interviewed on Joe Rogan podcast, Mr. Zuckerberg revealed that the FBI had basically said, hey, we'd like it if you, kind of curb this information as much as possible. It's Russian disinformation, yada, yada.
Yes.
And they knew full well that it was real with his laptop.
Yes.
And so that's clear election interference, I would say. They did that on purpose to try and gain the upper hand. And
they didn't go to Facebook until, right before the 2020 election when the FBI had the laptop in 2019.
Yeah, and there's plenty of time to pick that apart for that amount of time. And then there's a headline, Trump demands reinstatement as rightful president or a new election immediately as some Republicans seek distance from him.
Yeah, which is a real shame, Republicans. We're going to get to you later. But for right now, I mean, I can't say I disagree with Trump on that. I mean, obviously it doesn't seem like there's any real course of action for that to take place.
Right.
Because, all the votes were tallied, the electoral votes were approved. It's not much we can do about it now.
No, there isn't. And that's, he's I don't think he expects that to happen. I think he's just making a point.
Yeah.
And I agree with him as well. Not that that's going to happen, but I see where he's getting at. But what I was getting to on this whole thing is I think that the Democrats put too much on the January 6th riots, quote unquote, and the January 6th attempted takeover of the U.S. government and so to speak. I think they really thought that the American people would eat that up more.
Yeah, as Ricky Ricardo would say in I Love Lucy, they counted their bridges before their chickens was hatched.
Yes. And so with this Mar-a-Lago raid and the possible indictment that's coming down, I really think that they've played their hand, and I think they're just grasping at straws now, trying to create any sort of possible avenue to keep him from running again and becoming elected, because I think that would be a sure shot.
Absolutely. I think what Trump should have done, and Timcast made this, same argument, is that he should have announced his running, even though it was early. President Trump should have announced his running months ago, like in July, at least.
I agree.
In July.
Yeah, and I think he still has a chance to say that he's running for president now. And I think that would be a good thing for him to do, because it could change the balance a little bit.
Yeah.
Where if they continue to pursue anything, that it could seem like a conflict of interest, like they're actively investigating somebody who's running for president. And that that might just bolster them up even more. But I think that what the Democrats have been doing has just been strengthening our resolve as true American patriots, not necessarily Republicans, even though we do align ourselves more with Republican base. But and it's hard to say that I'm a Republican because of how spineless they have been. Like I said, we'll get to that later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and so I just think that it's bolstered us even more. I think it's really hardened us.
Yeah, there's a whole class of people that are beginning to return to the spirit of the origins of this country, which I think is much needed, but there needs to be more, even more so than now.
Indeed.
And as far as Trump goes, I think what he said is, his argument of wanting a new election now or being reinstated is a good thing to say. But I think he shouldn't play the having another election now. Like kind of what Tim Pool was saying, you shouldn't stay with this in the past view of like, oh, they did us wrong in the past.
Yeah. We need to move on.
Let's move forward and say, this is what happened.
Look at what they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at what they've done instead of, oh, we need to right the wrongs of the past. Yeah, it's kind of a different view.
And then a lot of times you can't even do that in real life. You can't right your wrongs of the past.
Right.
And so it's a little unrealistic, but I get what he's doing. You get what he's the point he's trying to make.
And then the reason why I think he's trying to toe that line is because I find a lot of Republicans, a lot of conservatives are scared of the concept of returning the favor. A lot of them see it as revenge or being vengeful, and that's something I find conservatives tend to stay away from.
Yeah.
Which is so tough because that's the only way that the other side plays.
It is
out of vengeance.
They do not fight fair.
Right.
At all. And that's been proven time and again. And speaking of not playing fair, this is a little old, but going into our kind of next subject here is the Sam Harris and Hunter Biden statement that Sam Harris made. And this is kind of like shows where their resolve is at for some people.
Yes, it's the TDS is all tied into it.
Yeah. A popular left-wing author has gone viral for declaring he would not have cared if Joe Biden's son, Hunter, had, quote, corpses of children, unquote, in his basement and it had been covered up prior to the 2020 election.
Yeah. He said that Trump University was worse.
Yes.
Than if Hunter had dead children in his basement.
I mean, just take a moment to just really digest what he's saying here. I mean, we're talking about...
These are today's intellectuals, folks.
Yeah, this is Sam Harris, a renowned, staunch atheist.
Yes, and pseudo-intellectual. Now, I mean, I say pseudo-intellectual. He said he's had enough proof that he might be an intellectually smart fellow.
Yes, yeah.
But gosh, being good at philosophy and having a whole lot of book smarts, you got to have more than that. You got to have a little common sense.
Yeah,
I mean, a little street smarts.
If that's how much you hate President Trump, and for what? Why does Sam Harris hate Trump so much that he's willing to make a statement like that? And he wasn't just saying, "Oh yeah, maybe if this had happened." I mean, he was actually saying, if he literally said, "If I wouldn't have cared."
Yeah.
If there were corpses of children in Hunter's basement.
And of course he walked it back. He attempted to walk it back, I should say.
Yeah, just say
right
face.
Away. Yeah.
But at the same time, it came out. Was that a Freudian slip?
Absolutely, yeah. He meant it. You can't tell me he didn't mean it when he said it. Of course he meant it. Because he didn't stumble or stutter over his wording on that.
Right. He was clear, concise. He came right out with it. It was a direct answer to a question. He didn't even pause to think about it. He just said it.
Right. It's like if someone shot him full of sodium pentothal before it happened. And if you don't know what sodium pentothal is, it's what they call truth serum. it causes you to tell the truth. It's an old trick.
Interesting stuff.
CIA. Anyway, watch out for the FBI. I don't know if they
Yeah.
knock on the door.
But that's just, we were just looking at that. And I know that's a little bit of an old news story, but it's just, once
ridiculous.
again, it ties back in. I mean, just they're playing their hands. They're exposing themselves like they've never exposed themselves before.
Yeah, and it ties into this whole concept that we've been going over the last few episodes of just a godless culture and how we're going in a direction against God as a country. Where people are seeking Sam Harris as an example or someone to follow after in life. When Sam Harris is super popular in doing debates against Christians, people like Ken Ham, William Lane Craig, and arguing that, God doesn't exist.
Right. I just wonder what his basis of morality is. I mean, with Sam Harris, an atheist,
Yes.
basically morals are subjective.
Yeah, that's the only argument you could make
Yeah.
is that, he would argue, I imagine, from what I understand from watching some of his stuff, he would argue that morals aren't necessarily subjective just because they've been made up by society. Now, he wouldn't word it that way.
Right. Well, here's the thing: is a statement like that, he wouldn't have cared. Well, maybe he wouldn't have cared because somehow Trump's morals aren't aligning with his own, and somehow Hunter's are, but they're subjective, so it doesn't really matter. It's very nihilistic.
Yeah, and I really...
in a sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons why he's so against Trump is because Trump, though he may not be the shining example of what a Christian is,
Indeed,
if he truly is a Christian, what he does do, though, is he does openly support Christians to act their faith and allow their faith to influence the government and the way it was supposed to be.
Right.
And
this government does not, and this way of life, as we discussed, I think last episode, does not. It was founded on Christian principles, Christian ideas, and Christianity itself, and the fact that Jesus is the Savior of the world.
right.
And we're going down a path, and we have been for years,
Mm-hmm.
of a godless society. And there's, unfortunately, without Christians in power, in positions of power, the holes in the system are exploited. Whereas
Yeah.
if you had Christians in power, yes, there's still holes in the system, but they wouldn't be exploited if you had true God-believing, God-fearing Christians within those sections, because they wouldn't exploit the system.
Yeah, not as much. I completely agree. And I also want to kind of caution that doesn't mean that it would be perfect.
No, people are still people.
Yeah.
People are still people.
Christians are still humans.
Yes, they are.
Despite what we'd like to believe, we don't automatically become perfect. Once you're a Christian, people still struggle. People still make wrong steps. People are fooled into believing that they are Christian when they, in fact, may not even know what being a Christian actually means.
Yes.
Because to a lot of people, being a Christian means, I believe in God. And
Yeah,
that's
I
it.
go to church.
Yeah, I go to church. That's a good one. I go to church.
But it's just one of those things where we've just come down this path so far, and we're reaping what we've been sowing as a nation, and we're trying to, with our podcast here, with as little influence as we may have at the moment, we're really trying to get people back on track and really look at what is going to benefit us as a nation and as a people, and get Christians to start